Because ultimately, we don't decide what our brands mean to people. People decide what they mean.
Welcome to The Array by Jacquard, the agending enterprise platform that creates content that converts. In today's episode, we're delighted to welcome Sally Barton, Director of Marketing Growth Strategy at Mondelez International. Sally is a highly experienced brand and growth leader whose career has spanned categories as diverse as household products, skincare, chocolate, and snacks, working across the UK, the US, and global markets. At Mondelez, Sally has had a wide range of leadership roles across brand equity, marketing excellence, and growth strategy, helping shape how one of the world's most iconic consumer goods companies prepares for the future of marketing. Currently, her work sits at the center of one of the biggest challenges facing modern brands: how to adapt to an increasingly fragmented media landscape that demands more content across more channels with greater speed and effectiveness than ever before. In today's conversation, we'll explore what marketers need to succeed, how organizations must evolve to meet rising content demands, and what the future operating model of marketing may look like. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you for having me.
So it's a tradition as part of this podcast to kind of go through some questions that we've got in our data set about what language improves engagement and conversions and what language might not. And so I have, call it confectionery-based language that I'm going to go through, and we're going to work out whether there are certain words that can really move the needle and certain words that can't.
Let's see if I can get it right today.
Jasper can never get it. Oh no, Jasper in the last episode did get one of them right. Yeah.
I'm feeling the pressure. I've worked
I'm
in
on a
the
winning.
world
I'm on a winning. No, the guest always wins in this section. So
well, now I doubly feel the pressure, but I'm a competitive soul as well, so I'm excited by trivia in any shape.
Good.
What do you think that language around taste does to engagement rates in CRM? So, and the language, I'll give you two examples: delicious and chocolate, not necessarily together. Do you think that is? I'll make it a binary answer. You think that improves engagement rates or lowers engagement rates?
I'll go first. I'm going to say improves.
Okay,
I'm going to agree with you and say it improves it.
That's it. You can't just start agreeing with the guest, Jasper. That's how you get past the always losing them.
I realize the reason why I'm always losing is because I was always going first. Maybe this is the new way that I play this game.
Maybe that's it. Okay, so I looked in the data set. Delicious actually improves, and chocolate, pretty much actually a similar amount, improves engagement by 120%. Relative. Yeah, which is actually amazing.
My inside knowledge there is when it comes to products in the snacking world, taste is really a number one driver of choice. So so I think knowing that something's going to taste delicious, I can imagine would drive that engagement.
I'm impressed that people believe it. They trust it. Yeah. This tastes great. I haven't tasted it yet, but I believe you. So therefore I'm going to try it.
What about nostalgia? Not the word nostalgia, but the concept of nostalgia. These are words obviously like remember, classic, and memories. What do we think? At this one, I'm going to make it a bit more difficult, and we're gonna ask a relative lift over the average open rate. The average open rate being, I think, something like 18.3%. This is for email opens. What do you think nostalgia does relatively to open rates, percentage-wise?
We have to guess the relative lift.
Guess the relative improvement of performance. I've made it a bit easier because I said improvement.
I thought it would be an improvement because, again, snacks are very emotional. People connect with the memories, the nostalgia. I think you said taste was 20%. And so I'm going to guess 15%.
No, that was 120% increase.
Oh.
It was 100,
okay.
So more than doubled. Taste more than doubled.
I'm going to go 100.
Okay. So the straight double. Okay, Jasper?
I'm going to go 45%.
Sally gets it on this one. It was 87% increase.
Wow. That's good.
That is good.
I'm very nostalgic about the 90s, so I can understand that.
Yeah, it's having a moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to go the other way. The word treat appears actually 9,000 times in our data set over about 500,000 subject lines. What do you think that does to open rates? The word treat.
It's not just going to be in reference to food. It's going to be in reference.
It's disambiguated. So in terms of like, could be, here's a treat or treat yourself.
I'm going to say it improves performance. I'm going to say it improves performance by 30%.
Okay.
I also think it improves based on how much I would be persuaded to open something when I'm offered a treat. So I will say 50%.
Okay. It lowers it.
No.
Treat actually lowers it by an absolute 3%. So relative 18%. That's probably a 20% drop relative in open rates with the word treat. I feel like that's an interesting one because treat yourself. I'm trying to think of situations where treat is used. I kind of understand the nostalgia piece. I think, Sally, you're definitely right about the taste thing. But I think with some things like treat yourself, or there doesn't really seem like the context of how that word might be used, nothing that would really draw users. I'm kind of making stuff up now, but I'm just thinking about why it might not engage. But
I have a hypothesis that I think when it comes down to things like promo codes and like kind of offers, I don't know if that's swaying it, the idea of like a treat in that way, and it's not really as compelling. Maybe the treats aren't compelling, but taste and nostalgia is definitely more compelling.
And maybe it's perceived to be more promotional, and that kind of puts people off. Yeah.
Right. More transactional.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, last one. I've just seen one that actually I think is quite interesting. Flavor with a U. So the British flavor has a different open rate to the American flavor without a U. Do you think it's higher or lower?
Oh, who likes flavor more? The US or the UK? Wow. I'm going to say the US has more flavor and has a higher open rate.
Okay. Jasper?
Oh, this is my time to redeem myself. I'm going to say, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say the UK has more flavor and has a higher open rate.
I guess it's Australia as well. You have a U in Australian flavor, right?
Yeah, we spell it the same as the UK.
Okay. The answer is the UK. The UK has higher. It's not a lot, as you might expect, but the average open rate with a subject line that uses flavor, the U is 41.9, and it's 35.8 in the US, which is interesting.
I started to second guess myself because actually, when I do buy crisps over here, or chips as we call them in the US, I can't find the flavors that I would have bought in the UK. I actually sometimes just bring them over with me. So now that makes sense. There's a few more plain flavors here on the chips.
Yeah, we like flavor in the UK.
I think as a Brit in the US as well, I think Brits are more discerning when it comes to different flavors than the Americans. And I think maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's an element to that. All right.
Crisp flavors in the UK are kind of insane. It's like, and also in Europe, it's like
everyone's very opinionated in the UK about crisp flavors.
Dinner crisp. It's like, I don't even know how we got there, but we've got
roast
like the roast dinner crisp.
Prawn cocktail. Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of them. All right, let's get stuck here. Jasper, you want to kick us off?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's a good segue in terms of the breadth of your experience. So you've covered, your career has spanned everything from dishwasher detergents to skincare to chocolate. I'm interested to know. So I've got two questions off of that. Across so many categories, is there anything that's taught you from a marketing fundamentals perspective that it stays consistent? And then also as a follow-up question to that, have you found, is there anything surprising across categories where certain really specific things have worked better depending on the category you're working in?
I think the thing that really stays consistent and is something that you have to lean into if you are somebody making a swap from working on one category to another category is just always coming back to the consumer and deeply understanding who they are, what makes them tick, what is happening in their lives, and distilling that into insights. So going beyond, the surface level of, yes, they're busy, they have all these demands, they're this demographic, here's where they live, but really understanding like what their interaction with the category is and where the opportunity is. And I'll give you an example of something that was different when I went into different categories. So working on dishwasher tablets and dishwasher cleaner, I got to really understand the consumer there, that this idea that a dishwasher might be dirty and then it's cleaning your dishes, it grossed people out. And so you really get into that psychological understanding of, well, we need to make people feel really disgusting about their dishwashers and make them aware that they need to buy dishwasher cleaner so that their dishes, the things that they eat their food off of, are clean. So kind of following that path down, we created really, I worked on some communications that were very functional, really driving that value to the consumer. But then I came into the chocolate world and I'm like, okay, now I need to understand these consumers and their connection with chocolate. And I said to my colleagues, so what's the benefit here? What are we doing for people? And they looked at me like I had two heads. They were like, what do you mean, what's the benefit? It's chocolate. People love it. It's emotional. It's connecting with them on a completely different level. So while getting to know the consumer, of course, remained really central, the way in which we connected with them was very different depending on how they interact with that category. So that was one of the biggest things I learned in moving to that category. Thankfully, I had great colleagues that, mentored me along the way. So that was it. I think one of the things that you get from working across categories is you really strengthen your skill set as a marketer in terms of how can you understand people and how can you connect with them.
You've just picked up on a real personal gripe of mine, which is why hasn't someone invented a self-cleaning dishwasher? Like, it's a thing that cleans stuff. It should clean itself. I know I'm going massively off topic right now, but
it's a really good point, actually. Let's put it out into the universe. In the world of AI now, somebody should have, the skill set and the tools to solve it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've got a question about how you better understand the consumer at a brand like Mondelez. Do you guys have a big direct-to-consumer business where you sell directly to? Are you trying to do more of that? Is there, when you try and let's say collect data in order to segment your users, in order to communicate better with them, how is that done in your world? Do you feel like it's harder to do it? Do you think it's easier because you've got so many different brands and so many different places that volume of data that you can get almost publicly is better? How do you think about that?
Yes. So historically, we haven't done a lot direct to consumer. We actually now have a platform called Oreo ID where you can order your own bespoke Oreos for, birthdays, celebrations. Give it a little plug there. It's really cool if you have an Oreo fan in your life. But that's really, compared to the scale of the rest of the business, most of our sales are through our retail partners. So we historically have not, directly captured that data. However, we have no shortage of data when it comes to our consumers. We obviously work with partners to understand purchase behavior, to understand the demographics and the behavioral impacts of our consumers. We also understand what they think about our brands. So we'll do equity studies, lift studies. And there's just a wide range of ways in which we work to stay close to consumers. One of the kind of tried and true methods is honestly just talking to them. So whether that's in qual groups, I think, as marketers, we are wired to see our brands in the world. And if you see somebody in a supermarket, more than a few shoppers have been surprised by marketers like myself, just ambushing them and asking them about what's in their basket. So there's many ways. I think one of the ways that has definitely been revolutionary over the past few years has been social listening. Now, because of the closeness that consumers have to our brands through our social channels. That's been a big opportunity in terms of understanding attitudes, and it's actually been the source of how some of our campaigns have developed over the past few years. So Nutter Butter being a great example of that. Huge social presence for Nutter Butter, really doubled down on driving a distinctive brand voice and connecting with Gen Z. And Gen Z really interact with that. The followers on Nutter Butter, love to comment, love to almost co-build the narrative there, and our brands showing up for consumers in that way. It really builds that connective conversation as well. So that's an example of not only is the data helping us understand our consumers better, but it's also helping us interact with them as well.
I love that. I love what you said about the old personalized Oreos. I mean, if you think about personalized marketing, that you can't get more personalized than your name on the actual product. So I love that. That's great. How does AI come into that picture in terms of how do you guys think about AI on the consumer side, i.e., have someone talking with ChatGPT and Mondelez products maybe appearing there almost like an SEO type situation, but also do you guys think about AI from a marketer's standpoint and about how you can leverage the data or content? How do you think about all of that, and where do you think the future holds in a lot of that space?
Yes. I think many of my colleagues think about it a lot. We know the scale of transformation is huge, and for us to be able to respond to it and be on the front foot of it, we really need to deeply understand the role that AI is going to play, both for our brands and inside our organization from a productivity standpoint, but also how it's playing a role for consumers in their lives as well. So we know, and many marketers will talk to, we're now not only marketing to the consumer, we're marketing to the machine. So we do need to work on how do our brands show up digitally in the spaces that AI is going to recommend our brands. So when people are looking for game day solutions for snacking when people come over, if they're looking for a recipe, if they're looking for snacks that are great for road trips, or they want a healthier snack bar, like a Cliff Bar for when they're going on a hike, they are going to ask AI. They're going to ask, AI search. So we are making sure that we're putting in place the steps that we are visible to consumers. So that's been really important. I think about, as we think about AI internally, it's definitely also there for productivity. It's something that will help us, be faster to respond to consumers when they have these needs or these queries, or, if something, say, there's a cultural moment that we need to show up in, it's going to enable us to be faster. It's going to enable us to get the content where it needs to be quicker. So it's definitely going to help us with all of these shifts that we're seeing in terms of the pace, the way that we need to communicate with consumers, and the way that we need to show up on what's now the new digital shelf is a ChatGPT or a Claude. So that's, it's a really big deal. It's all about physical, mental availability, and AI is transforming the game in that.
Yeah, and so when you think about going beyond that into kind of things like the production of content, but also when you're managing such a big portfolio of brands, each one having their own unique kind of footprint when it comes to how the end users think about them. How do you think about when you've got like this, for want of a better description, AI chaos ball in there in terms of production, and you still want to maintain brand voice? How do you have kind of like a central control panel for how you think about rolling out messaging to your different portfolio brands? Like how do you work in that environment?
That's a great question. It's like you were in some of my meetings this week. I talk about how in an age of AI, in the age of infinite content, the thing that matters more than ever now is really clear storytelling and having the clarity on the brand purpose, the brand strategy, the brand foundations. Because yes, we can put more and more content out there, but it has to be relevant content and it has to be true to the brand. So we do have a really foundational approach in terms of building strong brand foundations across all of our brands. I think that's been central to Mondelez for over 100 years. If you think about some of our brands being over 100 years old, the way that they have endured is they haven't constantly reinvented who they are fundamentally. They've stayed true to that purpose, but they've made sure that they can continue to stay relevant, continue to connect in ways that are modern to the consumer today. And so, yes, we definitely hold that really close at heart in terms of making sure that Oreo still means what Oreo's always meant and Ritz means what Ritz means to consumers, but bringing the content along with that.
I always ask this question of guests because I think there's no wrong answer to it, and there's such a spectrum of what's kind of right for each brand. But how do you think about kind of what you just said there is this kind of maintaining that brand identity whilst also staying relevant and resonating with your customers? How do you think about like hyper-personalization and then also a unique brand voice? Because there's almost those two things are almost at odds with each other, where you're speaking the language of an individual customer, but then you might be speaking the Oreo language, and maybe those two things aren't the same thing. Where on that spectrum do you sit in terms of being that hyper-personalized versus maintaining, or is that a false dichotomy? Maybe you can do both. How do you think about that?
I think the way that I'm thinking of that as you pose the question is the kind of what do you bring with yourself as a brand and what do you give to the consumer? And I think you bring the brand voice, you bring the heritage of the brand, you bring the distinctiveness of what a brand has always stood for and the tonality. And so there's a way that our brands do things. If we use, I don't know, let's use Sour Patch as the example. I haven't given them a shout out yet. So Sour Patch Kids, really distinctive brand voice. That's the sour then sweet. It's really playful, mischievous. So I think they're very clear in what that brand stands for. And then you can go personally, hyper-personalize to a consumer or to a shopper and offer
within that kind of, are you saying you almost have some wiggle room within that brand identity to be more personalized to different consumers within that?
I think so. And I think you have to have agreement on the parameters of what has to be fundamental and what can flex and what really needs to be true for this to be something that's delivered from Sour Patch Kids and not another candy. So you have to really, because distinctiveness at the end of the day is what has driven growth for our brands over time. And so you really need to hold on to what it is that makes you different from the rest of the world.
We've talked a bit about how you kind of manage the process of rolling out AI, whether it be AI generated content or any content across the multiple brands you have. But what do you think are the skills and capabilities of marketers with this sort of rising demand around content? Like what kind of skills and capabilities do you think marketers need to focus most over the next kind of 5 years as they deal with this kind of step change in how we work and how systems work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have worked a lot with marketers on capability building, and it's something I think about a lot. I do think the quality of the content and the relevance of the content is going to be more important than ever. So I think a lot of it is around fundamentals of brand building. We talked a little bit about that, the building brand foundations, being really clear on the purpose, being really clear on distinctive assets, showing up consistently over time. The storytelling in being able to really connect with consumers, to translate what we know into an insight, and then know where is the right to play as a brand, where can we offer value, where can we surprise, delight, emotionally be meaningful to consumers. In a world where, content is going to be easier than ever to create and multiply, let's make sure that we're delivering great content that is meaningful, is going to make a difference, and is going to cut through the noise of all the other content. So that for me is a really fundamental skill. I think also just learning and curiosity, having that learning agility, because I wonder what's going to happen in the next 5 years. The last 5 years have already been so transformative. And so, who knows what marketers will need to have in their Swiss Army knife in 5 years. So it's really staying curious, reading, listening, connecting with peers, building, connections in the community, listening to podcasts, staying connected to everything that is happening in our industry is going to help marketers stay ahead and stay ready for whatever AI and digital transformation is going to throw at us next.
What channels do you think are going to become increasingly important for marketers? We were just talking with the head of marketing at MasterCard Americas, and we were talking about experiences and offline marketing, and we were talking about how you talked about AI and how you can get your brands to appear there. It's almost like when Jasper and I were also talking about the kind of cyclical nature of certain things, and it feels like some experiences and offline marketing is becoming a bit of a comeback to some extent. But one question is, do you see it that way as well? But also, are there other channels that you're interested in that you think that a marketer could kind of look to over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, I hope and feel like the experiential and the IRL-ness of life and a brand showing up is on the rise. And I think, many of our brands really grew from the way that they were interpreted in the real world, whether that's, an Oreo being twist-licked dunks at home, but, or connecting over events with shareable snacks. But also, showing up in like sport is having a moment. We do a lot in the world of sport with, we have a snacking portfolio. We showed up at the Super Bowl. So with the Ritz. So I think it's certainly a space where, we follow wherever the consumers are. And if they are leaning to, we've had a rough 5 years, we've had a pandemic, we feel like digital is everywhere and we need a break from the screen, then that's where we'll follow. So I'm personally excited about that because I have a lot of heart for that. I think other channels, I think specifically for our brands, is retail media, because we see a lot more opportunity for the brand to show up at retail. And I think with the availability and capability now of many of the retailers to connect with consumers there, this is an opportunity for brands like ours, CPG brands, to connect all of the equity building work with conversion and to unsilo, if that's a word, unsilo the way that the brand shows up, because consumers don't look at it differently. So we might be structured that way. We have a shopper team and a brand team, but actually what the consumer sees is they see our brands. So they want our brands to show up for them at all of these touch points. And I think for us, retail is a great opportunity for our brands to really connect in a meaningful moment with consumers when they're considering. Snacking is it's often very in the moment people are making those decisions.
Do you think about loyalty a lot? Is that a big thing? Do you have you mentioned you obviously, other than that personalized Oreo program around kind of selling to partners, but do you think about and do you try and pursue kind of that direct relationship with customers through loyalty? And do you kind of do these loyalty programs with certain brands?
We don't do a lot of overt loyalty programs, but I would say we strive for loyalty, because if consumers are repeat purchasing your product, that you're doing the job you set out to do, which is to delight them, to satisfy them. And, from a snacking perspective, we're not snacking once a year. We're snacking more than once a year. So we want people to come back to our brands and enjoy them again. So, that really is the measure of success, your repeat purchases. So who do we bring back? So building building consumers' brand love is really the goal.
I'm trying to avoid snacking so frequently, but I just can't stop.
It just depends on what you're snacking on, Jasper. I think that's the.
It's Friday night. It's Friday night here in London. I'm going to be snacking on lots of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you raise a good point. And lots of people are choosing to snack less. They're making decisions about snacking. Maybe they're snacking less and they want the snack that they do have to be a treat that's really worth it. And so, we want to be that treat that when people do feel like, I'm going to have a me moment, or, I deserve this, or I want something to uplift my mood. Absolutely, we want to be connected in the way that they choose our brands.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that, but there's almost like that. If you're going to snack less, you want the snack to be worth it. But then there's also that you want the snack to be healthier, in many ways. And so there's almost two, you can't do those at the same time. And so there's always like both of those in my head will probably be something that's both happening, but just for different reasons. So that's, I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting.
Well, there's a lot of need states that people have. So snacking is a very varied brief. And if you think about all the moments, your Friday night snack is going to be different from my mid-afternoon on a weekday snack for sure. So I think we try to, with our brands, be there in the moments that are relevant for our consumers.
I just got back from Japan this week on holiday, and it's one of those things where it's just like the snacks, the difference in snacks between a 7-Eleven in Japan and a 7-Eleven in the US. Conceptually, snacking is the same, but when you look at it, you're like, it's fundamentally different, like what you'll snack on over there versus here. So I guess that I can lead that into a question. Culturally, do you see a big difference in how we think about this at Jacquard, how even communicating in the same language, American English, English, or French Canadian French, or French, has a big difference in how people engage with stuff. When you think about a brand, is it the same brand globally, right? When you think about Sour Patch, is it Sour Patch everywhere, or is there a lot of personalization that you do on a cultural level?
That's an amazing question. By the way, I'm so jealous that you just went to Japan. I'm learning Japanese at the moment, ahead of hopefully a future trip next year. And just to prove the importance of being culturally relevant. So I'm learning Japanese. I can say that was tasty. I'm hoping that that's going to be a phrase that I need to use a lot.
You're going to say that a lot. Trust me,
yes.
You'll say that a lot in Japan. Yeah.
So food obviously being very central to every trip. So I'm extremely looking forward to trying those snacks. So yeah, I worked on Cadbury in a global role, so I can give you an insight into how we thought about that as a global brand and how it showed up. And I guess the short answer is that culture and heritage in a region, it does play an impact. It does make a difference on how a brand shows up in some respects. The brand is still at its heart, at the real core, the same brand. So Cadbury is a brand that stands for deliciousness. It stands for generosity. It's got a glass and a half of milk in it in the UK, which is a generous amount of milk. It also was founded in a factory that was known as the factory.
Does it not have the milk in the US?
We don't run Cadbury in the US, so it's licensed to Hershey. So I can't talk to it here. I'm not aware.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
But so Cadbury operates in the rest of the world, and key markets I would say are India, Australia, and so it shows up always at the heart of what this brand stood for. It always stood for generosity. It always stands for that deliciousness of chocolate. But in each region, there's maybe just a different understanding of what that means to that audience. So in India, there was an iconic ad where it was the cricket ads where you'll have to look it up. This is the podcast, but it's really written into the kind of advertising history hall of fame of advertising in India. So it's really got some memories and connection that is slightly different from the connection that people have in Australia, that is slightly different than the connection that people have in the UK. So there are just nuances. And so you might show up in different moments. You might show up with different messaging. There's different holidays that we celebrate in all of these different regions. So there are some nuances that you really, want to lean into culturally. But at the heart, the brand is the same. And I think that was part of, the role I had in global, which was to make sure that we're building this iconic brand globally.
It's kind of funny how certain that do you believe, like, just talking about kind of cultural nuances. I did a panel a couple of years ago with the head of marketing for McDonald's Australia, and what they've done in Australia is they've sort of rebranded themselves as Maccas, because it's like everyone was calling us Maccas, so we're not going to call ourselves McDonald's anymore. We're just going to every ad is going to have Maccas on it. And do you kind of like that idea of culturally, like a group of people might just decide that they want to call something a certain way, or refer to something a certain way, or talk about how they consume the product in a certain way, and then the brand kind of almost adopts that as part of their ethos and kind of rolls it out as part of their marketing? Like, do you think that's a good pathway to go down?
I think it's really smart, because ultimately we don't decide what our brands mean to people. People decide what they mean. And so I think our consumers, our audiences, the people that buy our brands, they are the ones that we need to listen to. We need to show up for them. Otherwise, we're talking to ourselves. So I love that. The idea that your brand doesn't really belong to you anymore. It belongs to the people that buy it. And yes, serving them and honestly giving them what they want. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, let them shape it.
I like that, being led by the consumer, in some respects. Great. Jasper, do you want to wrap us up with the last question?
Yeah. So we always like to finish up with something, a tidbit or concrete piece of advice for people who are listening to the show. So if you're looking ahead 5 years, what do you think defines the most effective marketing organizations, and how should people think about adapting to that change? Especially if they're, a smaller organization just starting out on their journey. How would you advise them?
I would certainly advise to have your ears and eyes open to everything that's happening in the world. And again, it really comes down to that idea of curiosity, of staying tuned into what's happening, because change is happening so fast. We really need to keep up at the pace of change. So more than ever, I find myself outside of work looking and listening and connecting with others, talking to people, like building a community and really understanding what everybody else is going through as well. So I think the idea of curiosity, connection, understanding, what this moment needs of us is important. And that's going to underlie any transformation that you have. So it really comes down to that agility and that ability to listen and learn.
Amazing.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us. Sally Barton is the Director of Marketing Growth Strategy at Mondelez International.